Everyone talks about surrender like it's beautiful, like it's this peaceful, easy thing you do when you finally trust God enough. Just surrender it to God. Let go and let God. Give it all to Him. They say it like it's simple, like you just open your hands, release your grip, and suddenly peace floods your soul and everything works out. But nobody talks about what surrender actually feels like. It feels like death. It feels like God is asking you to kill the one thing you've been living for, the dream you've protected, the person you've prayed for, the future you've built in your mind, the control you've clung to because letting go feels like free falling into nothing. Surrender doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. And maybe that's why you're still holding on. Because letting go feels like giving up, like admitting defeat, like saying, "Fine, God, you win. I'll stop wanting what I want." Let's be honest about what you're holding on to. Maybe it's a dream, a vision you've had for years, a calling you've been convinced is from God. You've invested everything into it, and it hasn't happened. Year after year, you've waited, you've worked, you've believed, and it still hasn't happened. So now people are telling you to surrender it. But surrendering it feels like betraying yourself, like admitting you heard God wrong, like all those years of hoping were wasted. Or maybe it's control over your future, your timeline, your life. You've prayed for guidance, but you're terrified God's plan is different from yours. You're scared that if you surrender control, He'll take you somewhere you don't want to go, ask you to do something you don't want to do. So you hold tighter. You make your own plans. You force doors open. You manipulate circumstances, because at least then you're in control. But you're exhausted from trying to orchestrate your own life, exhausted from carrying the weight of outcomes, exhausted from the constant anxiety that if you let go for 1 second, everything will fall apart. Or maybe it's a person, someone who left, someone who broke your heart, someone you're still hoping will come back. Everyone tells you to move on and let them go, but you can't, because letting go feels like closing the door forever, like giving up on something you still believe could be saved. So you hold on. You check their social media. You replay the memories. You imagine the scenarios where they realize their mistake and come back. Here's what nobody tells you about surrender. It's not about letting go because you don't care anymore. It's about letting go even though you still care deeply. It's not about giving up your desires. It's about releasing your grip on how and when those desires get fulfilled. It's not about becoming passive. It's about becoming open. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. As long as you're holding on with clenched fists, God can't give you anything new. Your hands are too full. You're holding on to a vision that might be expired, a plan that might need to die so something better can be born, a person who might not be part of your future no matter how much you want them to be. And as long as you're white-knuckling your own plans, you're closing yourself off to what God actually has for you. But let's talk about what you're really afraid of. You're afraid that if you surrender, God will take away what you want most. That surrender is just a nice word for disappointment. That letting go means settling for less. You're afraid that if you release this dream, God won't give you another one. That if you let go of this person, you'll end up alone. That if you stop controlling your life, it'll spin out of control. You're afraid that surrender equals loss. And maybe you're angry that God is even asking you to surrender, angry that other people seem to get what they want without having to let go. Angry that you've already surrendered so much and it hasn't changed anything. How much more do you want from me, God? I've already given you everything. And now you want this too? The one thing I've been holding on to? The one thing keeping me going? Yes. Not because he's cruel, but because that one thing has become an idol. Because your identity is wrapped up in it. Because you've made it more important than him. And as long as that thing sits on the throne of your heart, he can't be there. Here's what surrender actually is. It's the moment you stop fighting God for control and start trusting him with outcomes. It's saying, God, I want this so badly, but I want you more. It's praying, not my will, but yours, and actually meaning it, even though it terrifies you, even though you don't know what his will is, even though his will might look different from what you've been praying for. Surrender is not giving up on your dreams. It's giving them back to the one who gave them to you in the first place, and trusting that if they're truly from him, he'll bring them to pass. And if they're not, he has something better. But here's the hardest part. You can't surrender halfway. You can't say, okay, God, I'll surrender this to you, but please make sure it works out the way I want. That's not surrender. That's negotiation. Real surrender is open-handed. It's saying, God, I trust you, even if this never happens, even if you say no, even if your answer is different from what I've been begging for. I trust that you love me, that you're good, that you know what I need better than I do. And that's terrifying, because it requires trust you might not have yet, faith that feels impossible, a level of letting go that feels like dying. But maybe that's exactly what it is, a death. The death of your timeline, the death of your plans, the death of your need to control, the death of your grip on what you think will make you happy. Because only when that dies can something new be resurrected. Jesus said, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Your dream might need to die, so God can resurrect it in a form you never imagined. Your plan might need to die, so God's plan can emerge. Your grip on that person might need to die, so God can either bring them back in a healthier way or bring someone better. But death always comes before resurrection. Always. So should you surrender? Not because it's easy, not because it makes sense, not because you've stopped caring or wanting or hoping, but because you've tried everything else. You've planned, you've controlled, you've manipulated, you've held on with everything you have, and you're exhausted. Maybe it's time to find out what happens when you finally release your grip. Maybe it's time to discover that God's hands are bigger than yours, that his plans are better than yours, that his love for you is not dependent on you getting everything right or holding everything together. Maybe surrender isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of peace, not because your circumstances changed, but because you stopped fighting them. The beginning of freedom, not because you got what you wanted, but because you stopped needing it to be happy. The beginning of trust, not because you have all the answers, but because you finally believe that God does. Here's what I know. God is not trying to take things away from you. He's trying to free you from the things that are holding you captive. That dream that's become an obsession, that person who's become an idol, that control that's become a prison. He's not asking you to surrender because he wants you to suffer. He's asking you to surrender because he wants you to live, really live. Not in the future when everything works out. Not when you finally get what you want. But now, today, in this moment. Surrender is not about what you lose. It's about what you gain. You gain peace. You gain freedom. You gain a God who can finally move in your life because you're no longer blocking him with your clenched fists. So yes, surrender. Not because you're giving up, but because you're finally letting God take over. Not because you don't care anymore, but because you care enough to trust him with it. Not because you've stopped hoping, but because you're putting your hope in the right place. Surrender doesn't mean you stop wanting. It means you stop demanding. It doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It means you stop dictating. It doesn't mean you stop praying. It means you start trusting. And maybe, just maybe, on the other side of surrender, you'll discover something you never could have found while you were holding on so tightly. You'll discover that God's plans are better than yours, that his timing is perfect, even when it's painful, that his love is not dependent on you getting what you want, but on him giving you what you need. So let go. Open your hands. Release your grip, not because it's easy, but because it's time. And trust that the same God who's asking you to surrender is the same God who will catch you when you fall. He's not going to drop you. He's not going to disappoint you. He's not going to give you less than you deserve. He's going to give you exactly what you need, which might be different from what you want, but it will be better, because he knows you better than you know yourself. So surrender, and watch what God does when you finally get out of his way.